Rafid Fadul, MD, outside the DC area, founder of Zivian Health and new incoming chief medical officer of ARPA-H. So thankful to have you on Executive Uninterrupted. Welcome to the show, my friend.
Thanks so much. Happy to be here.
This is a lot of fun because we got to know each other a little bit before we started recording here. And I think what's unique about you is you span not like an unknown growing trend here, digital health, a clinical world, but also you're an academic. And I want to get behind all those fancy titles and terminal degrees I just listed there. You're outside the DC area, but you've had quite an adventure. And seeing what you've done at Wheel and even before that, I'm curious of a few inflection points that brings you here today with all the things I just listed. So with your background and growing up, what took you to go into medicine? And then what was that big bridge over into digital health? Or was it while you were practicing?
So I guess what got me into medicine in the first place was I was actually like a finance economics guy in college. And it was really late in college when I kind of had this like aha moment that like maybe this wasn't for me. Thinking about like efficiency versus equity, I thought ultimately maybe I should change paths. And so I decided at the end of college that I needed to go back and do some more science and go into medical school because I wanted to do something that was going to make the world slightly better when I left than when I got there. So medicine seemed to me the most direct choice to do that. It was a very direct impact. And that's what I did. I took a year took a year off to like a post-baccalaureate year, and then I was kept in medical school. And then I was off to the races after that. That's the origin story. Why digital health? So when I was in my residency, I was also doing my MBA. And as a part of my capstone for my MBA, I had to come up with some kind of project that was the triple aim, right? So net benefit to patients and to the system, et cetera. And my family's from Iraq. And this is back in 2008-9. So the Iraq war was over. We were in like the reconstruction period. Heavy air quotes because it never calmed down. And so when we think about barriers to care in the United States, there's a lot of like standard barriers that we all talk about, but in Iraq, it's actually 10 times worse, if not more, right? So the opportunity to create something, and it was something simple. We worked with a local telecom provider, and we had some folks here at Accenture and then also at Georgetown and Hopkins to basically use phones as point of care access solution. So you can enter blood pressure and glucose and basically do very simple management of blood pressure and diabetes because there was not enough doctors. There was not enough healthcare providers in Iraq. And the ones that were there, they couldn't even be reached. And so we had all these multiple issues of, you can hear my son in the background. Yeah. There's multiple issues of access. Hey, little bud, did I bring out a guest?
Yeah, you could bring on it.
Okay,
this is an open floor,
an open podcast. Now you're gonna see my son. So
there you go. What a handsome guy!
Yeah, I appreciate it.
Mine are making noise in different parts of this.
Yeah, well, it was a snow day, so everyone's home today, including this guy. So basically, we used cell phones as a point of access for care delivery, and the benefit of that. So it was a simple program, and we used the teach the teacher model with doctors here and doctors in Iraq. And the very basic premise of it was leveraging technology to improve access. And so that was my first exposure into it. And it was like part of my capstone of Hopkins. And that's how I got into it. And then, so from 2012 onwards, I was working in the domestic side on the for-profit side, leveraging technology again for improving access and care. So that was the story. That's how it all started.
Wow. And I think you skipped over a lot of really good ports, Rafid. So I think the interesting thing is, so I have a very huge group of friends from Iraq, and I think a lot of their success was attributed to stories they were told when they were young, when they were growing up, of what I think was thousands of years before the story of Noah, of Utman Ishtin and the superheroes. And I've been told these stories in so many circles of friends, and that was an accelerant for a lot of them in medicine and business. And I think I see a lot of that in you as a superhero in digital health. And I think what's really neat is you took what you did at Hopkins, and very humble of you, you didn't mention this, you wrap back around, you're also giving back. You're teaching back to them as adjunct in the Carey School of Business at Hopkins. I think that's fantastic. There's a lot of leaders that get what they need and then they jump and they dump and they go, but you've wrapped back around. And I think that's so cool of you to do that. And has that involvement still carried forward in your juggling of careers and roles now?
I had to recently just let that go because for conflict purposes for this new role I just took. And one of the things I lamented when I was 2009, 2010, when I was just coming out of residency and MBA and everything, was I didn't have a ton of mentors who had this atypical path that I had taken. So like at that time, it was a very rigorous orthodoxical path. You go into residency, then you go to fellowship, and then you do research, then you become an academic. And if you did anything else deviating from that path, it was not really a good look. Yeah. I'm going to let the beast out here.
That was a good cameo.
Yeah. Let's see what he does next.
Yeah, it makes sense in terms of how you have to manage things appropriately for work conflicts and things like that. But I'm sure you're going to be very missed there at the Carey School of Business. And yeah, let's dive in. So digital health is, I'm very thankful what's being lifted up with the access model. I've started to do a lot of work over the last year with that. Some great people that have influenced that model. Will Gordon, Dr. Klasko, Liz Quo from different circles. And I think that's going to be a hopeful experiment of success the next several years. And what I found so exciting about ARPA-H is the success that came out of DARPA for the defense side of the government. And that was so well done, executed, and lifted up through leadership. Now it's flipped into the health lens. So for people that aren't familiar with ARPA-H, I'm going to just spell out the acronym: Advanced Research Projects Agency for Health. You can't get more straightforward than that. It's really designed for accelerating breakthroughs in health solutions. And it spans digital health, which is a lot part of your background, clinical service delivery. And it's intended to rapidly improve the process of taking things, experimenting them, and putting them into application, if I'm getting it right. Yeah. And with that, I don't want to say budget, but responsibility. There's a huge monetary responsibility that you have to be able to allocate funds and assess these things. Do you think the Zivian work has really taken your mindset and prepared you for the ARPA-H, or is it a continual evolution of how your leadership and how you're seeing the marketplace? This is just another kind of evolution in your brain, dare I say.
Yeah, it gets back to this original desire to make the world slightly better than when you got it here. And I'll tell you, when I'm at the bedside, I do critical care. And so when I'm at the bedside, it's life or death moments, and I can influence these, call it 15 patients in a day, right? And then there are their families and this ripple effect that goes out from there. And that's incredibly gratifying. But sometimes the patient is the person in the bed. Sometimes the patient is maybe next to the bed, and sometimes the patient is the system. And the stuff that I was doing at the bedside, while I was making an impact on that person's life, I wasn't really moving the needle in a macro sense. And I was losing the war, even though I won that fight. And so zoomed out and started focusing on systemic solves. Right? And that's what Zivian started as, right? Is the nature of workforce in healthcare is shifting for a variety of reasons. And I can get into that if you like, but we are not equipped to support those healthcare providers that are making up the new face of the workforce. And so Zivian was there to help solve that, so you can get this trickle down benefit of better workforce engagement and better fulfillment across the system, and ultimately better outcomes, right? So that was what Zivian was doing. And in that same vein, ARPA-H is doing the same thing, right? Like ARPA-H is not focused on one patient, it's focused on all the patients. And so how do we not just improve care 1 or 2%, right? Like if you think about the NIH, for instance, their NIH is doing fantastic work, but they're trying to move the needle 1%, 2% every day, which is important, by the way. I don't mean to diminish it. It's incredibly important what they're doing. What ARPA-H is doing is thinking like, okay, how can I move, instead of from like one horse to a faster horse, how can I make us transport by spaceship instead? Like we were trying to entirely change the game and do it in a dramatic fashion. So we're taking very big bets, just like DARPA did, right? And we're trying to tackle things that the government is uniquely positioned to tackle that maybe private sector can't, or there's disincentives for them to do so, right? And I can give you a variety of examples for that, but we're trying to do the things that no one else can do. Like we do the impossible and we do it fast. We do it in the next 3 to 5 years.
And I like that because it's pressure tests in reality. not in a siloed think tank
Yep.
by any means. And what you did call out, I think, comes back to risk aversion for more of the financial side of a VC firm in terms of analysis, or those that or public companies as well. They'll see things and they'll test them and say, what's the road to profitability? And if it's not in their time frame at the moment, relative to portfolio dollar, they won't do it.
Exactly right.
And that's not going to work in healthcare. It's never. It's worked in a malfunctioning fashion, as you've seen and you feel as a physician, that it's only helping certain parties and the patient's always getting a big challenge in their face, whether it's a disease or care coordination or benefits, things like that. And I'm really excited that your analogy of digital health at the macro change level to this, that was perfect. So I admire all the work that's ahead of you and very thankful that you're in this position. So I'm curious, Rafid, you still practice, and that's a very important part to you. Are there things that you're seeing still on a weekly basis, daily basis, that you're taking into your lens as the new CMO of ARPA-H to say, hey, this is something that's going to stick and work. Let's pass it forward, whatever the process might be at ARPA-H for moving innovations forward. Are you taking those daily insights that are burned into the front part of your brain and applying that? Or is this something that you try to compartmentalize a little bit?
No, one begets the other, right? So my experience at the bedside or in front of the patient in the office, every data point that I experienced there, from the patient experience to the clinical data to how I got the data, how we share information back, everything actually informs our decision, right? So when we think about the things that we are doing at ARPA-H, we have a few large mandates around biosecurity, around eliminating devastating diseases, but also building a sustainable, resilient system that can scale up and deliver care at scale at high quality, right? And so those are the things that we are very heavily focused on. And every experience I have with a patient, every conversation I have with someone who has touched the healthcare system is also informing our decisions and how we make decisions at ARPA-H.
I like that because you can't separate it. And I was just curious of how your brain operates in those scenarios, because it is, like you said, every data point that can contribute toward your effort here. Very well said. And I'm curious, this is tough to see, but you're standing very fresh in here, recently sworn in, and you have a lot of different things that'll be hitting you over the next coming months, years. What do you think is going to be the most impactful thing that ARPA-H supports and invests in relative to the healthcare ecosystem? Is it on the AI enablement end? Is it connected just to a service model for population health, disease management, and rare disease? Is it something of device nature? What's striking you as the most impactful thing that ARPA-H will be supporting?
This sounds like a cop-out answer, but I really cannot list just one. I say that and this is not a great thing, but the bar is pretty low for us right now within healthcare, right? Like, we do not have a robust, effective healthcare system as compared to other industrialized nations. And I can read you the laundry list of metrics in which we are last or near last. And so there's a lot of opportunity to improve all across the board for us. And so we see really exciting things within cell and gene therapy. We see exciting things around biosecurity that are important for securing the bioeconomy of the US and making sure that we stay a safe nation. There's incredible things around AI, both that lead into drug discovery, that also lead to care delivery models. We just launched a program called Advocate, which is leveraging agentic AI to optimize the care for heart failure. And the exciting thing about that, just that one use case affects 30 million plus Americans, the vast majority of which are getting suboptimal care based on the guidelines. And this has an opportunity to improve this very expensive, very prevalent comorbidity and its outcomes. We can actually drive major change just in that. But the beauty is that solution, if and when it works, which I have a high suspicion that it's going to be successful, when that use case is basically closed out and like we've proven it to be a solid win, it's extrapolatable across every other indication. Right. So now all of a sudden you can use that across healthcare. Right. So we're doing it in one very large subset of the population, but it's going to apply more broadly after that. And that's an ARPA hard problem. Right. So we talk about ARPA hard. ARPA hard, the things that the rest of the market maybe is not ready to do or can't do. Like, there's a lot of hurdles around launching an agentic AI tool that's FDA approved. And we are conquering those hurdles. Right. So once we have paved the way, we bulldozed that path. others can follow behind us. But we will take that first mover risk. As you mentioned before, this is not something that a VC would get behind because there's regulatory issues associated with this, but we will take that risk and we will put ourselves out there so that others may follow. And that's the beauty of what we're doing.
That's a great example, Rafid. So it makes me feel one of those strong pillars of ARPA-H is to spur market innovation that's outside the government body so that others can be innovative and pick up from the learnings and the insights that you're providing. Is that, do you think, one of the main things that will come out of the first maybe 36, 18 months of you at ARPA-H is others spurring innovation and then cycling back to the healthcare ecosystem?
That's exactly right. So one of the use cases that we like broadly is think of like a platform technology, right? So if I'm a VC or if I'm an investor or if I'm in a private company, whatever, regardless of my funding source, I wouldn't necessarily pursue a platform technology because one that could be widely beneficial upon which many other companies can build. Why? Because I wouldn't get the upside that those companies get, right? I've just created this kind of open source platform and they reap the benefits, right? So as a private company or as an investor, it doesn't make sense for me to invest in that if I'm not getting the gains. Whereas for us, it absolutely makes sense to invest in that because Americans get the gains, right? Humanity gets the gains. And so for us, we like platform technologies like that upon which everyone else, we don't have a monopoly on smart people. We got a lot of brilliant folks in the room, but there's a lot of brilliant folks outside of here. So if we give them great tools upon which to build, they can do great things as well, right? And so our net goal is to dramatically change healthcare for humanity, right? And we can be the catalyst, we can be the tip of the spear, and we're very happy to have others follow behind us.
I like where you're going, and I think you pay such good homage to the rest of your brethren in NIH and obviously inside ARPA-H with those comments. And I'm curious, going back to postdoc, you complete a residency, you're on your own, you're treating a lot of patients, seeing a lot of different scenarios every day. And as a two-part question, I'm thinking about your days purely as a clinician, and then your days now as a veteran of industry, digital health in ARPA-H. What was the biggest threat to the healthcare ecosystem when you were a attending physician? And then what do you think, fast forward today, what that is right now?
I think the biggest threat was systemic threats, right? I think there's two that I would identify. One is that, by the way, almost all the doctors, the nurses, the RTs, the PAs, everyone that I was in the trenches with shoulder to shoulder, those guys, you don't do it for money, right? You do it because you care about people. There's plenty of better ways to make a lot more money, a lot faster with a lot less misery than going through the medical route. And so they're doing it because they want to be there. They care for their fellow humanity, or fellow people. With that being said, I think the two large problems are, number one, we live an unhealthy life. And there's a lot that goes into that. And this is some of the emphasis around the MAHA movement has been around this, right? Our generally sedentary lifestyle in America, the rates of obesity, the rates of the consumption of processed foods. These are things that are influencing the demand side for healthcare services. And that's not great. And then the second problem, I would say, is a systemic one. And the first one is actually in some ways an example of that. We have a system that is misaligned with the incentives of the patient, right? And it's across the entire ecosystem. I could easily pick on payers or pharma or whatever, and you can make arguments for all, including doctors, by the way, doctors, hospitals, all of it, right? There is an opportunity and I'm not pointing the finger at any one stakeholder. Like, there's an opportunity for us all to do better by the patients or by the right of the patient. And fundamental misalignment of incentives, I think, is part of the big problem here that we were trying to solve for. And so ARPA-H we're solving things in a different way. We're solving like deep science problems, and I'm speaking more about policy right now, but those are things that I think, you asked me, like my time at the bedside, those things that struck me as glaring, like the just structural problems around the healthcare system that perpetuated other problems.
Yeah. And it takes you I'd say a long time to realize that, because you're almost blinded to it because you're so routined in the tens of patients that you're seeing every day.
Right.
And the different scenarios that you're treating as well. So once you get pulled out of it, then you can recognize, wow, there's a lot of challenges. And then you cross that over to rural, hinterland, urban, all types of different geographies and demographics in the mix. in the US, and you have yourself one crazy alphabet soup of problems. So thank you for that reflection, Rafid. I thought that would be an interesting thing to dive into. So I am curious. So looking a little bit outside ARPA-H, there's a lot of different innovators in the space. And we talked to a few of those on this little show here, those that have been inside healthcare for a while, and then now they're at a VC, or they're purely in academia or research, or heck, they're just podcasting or maybe even DJing on the side. There's a lot of different executives that take different routes now. And I'm curious of the influential marketplace that we have here. We have longevity. We have wearables now that are valued over tens of billions of dollars. Do you think those voices and those things are purely focused on a small consumer market, and they're not really addressing a population health need? They're in healthcare to make money, but they're not really changing things. And I'll give you an example. So really good people that have stood up private pay models to help you live longer, expanding your health and lifespan. And it's not inclusive of any kind of clinical or medical services. It's just personal training to the max. Is this a trend that's just going to keep happening the next few years? That's only maybe for the elite that can have $100K go out of their pockets every year for this? Or is it something maybe the rest of the marketplace and healthcare is going to try to learn from and make it more affordable and pull it in? Or is it just a trend? I'm curious how you see all these different things that pop up literally every quarter of a year.
Yeah, I don't think it's a trend. I actually think it's a reaction, right? So if you look at our healthcare system, it is still paternalistic, not just in decision-making, but in the way we manage data and the way that we have its overall structure. It's paternalistic, right? What you've seen with, I hate the word longevity because I think it's a vague definition, but I am in the longevity space and I semi cringe every time I say it. But what you've seen with longevity is agency, right? Like people want to control and have more influence over their outcomes, right? And so they're grasping at whatever they can get their hands on right now. And so we're seeing new tools to do that. And actually, I think this is a good thing, right? So I think this is the beginning of crack in the dam. And pretty soon it's going to bust open, right? And when it busts open, it's going to look like greater agency for the individuals and the patients. And that's going to take many forms. But generally speaking, people are, again, look at our life expectancy. Look at the data around our health span. We don't live generally healthy lives, right? And that manifests in fourth, fifth, sixth decade, sometimes even earlier. And then it just gets worse over time, right? So that's not healthy living. That's not what people want, right? When people think about like aging gracefully, they're thinking about doing the things they want to do and make them happy and give them fulfillment in their lives, whether that's playing tennis with their husband or a wife, or like picking up their grandkids and dancing at their granddaughter's wedding and all these things. All that stuff requires you to be healthy, right? In order for you to, like, the car has to be running in order for you to enjoy the ride. And so the thing that we've gotten away from is this: our healthcare system is very reactive. It's not proactive, right? And so what you're seeing with this movement of like, give me all the data, right? Give me all the data and let me start to be proactive with trainers, with better diet, nutritionists, et cetera, is this desire to be proactive with your health, which I think is actually phenomenal. Is it perfect today? Absolutely not. Are there charlatans in the space? 100%, right? They're definitely there, right? There are people who are there just to make money, but you can also make money and do right by someone. So I'm not saying that's all. In fact, I think there are a lot of bad actors actually in this space. And I think there's a lot of snake oil. But if we zoom out, carve out the bad actors, this is a good thing. The fact that we are demanding some agency over our care. This is a great thing. This is not something we should be like pushing off as fringe. We should actually be listening to it and ushering it in.
Glad you said that, because you actually changed my perspective on something I've been struggling with the last maybe couple months since it was launched. It's a wearable product that claims to have good enough math to measure your VO2 max output. And this is not something that someone with heart failure or diabetes 2 cares about. This is more of a performance end and someone thinking about lifespan, health span. And my biggest critique of it is there's no gas exchange measure. You can't measure that. It's not the real thing. But if I see it as a silver lining and less of a black and white measure, it's intended to help you improve. And it's not prescriptive by any nature. But I saw it as this ain't the real deal. This is another feature that's added on for this company to just sell a device and try to become profitable. I'll try to see things more of a silver lining innovation for you if that example sticks. But I'm just seeing more and more of these, and they're not applied to the people that need it. And that's why I am so excited about access.
Yeah, you raise an interesting point. And I think there's two sides to this argument. And just for everyone who's listening, VO2 max, as you said, it's per performance, right? Like this is how like high performance athletes kind of look at this, just kind of measure their level of fitness. But for all of us, performance athletes or not, VO2 max is incredibly important because the correlation of all-cause mortality reduction with your VO2 max is the strongest out of almost any measure, right? What that means in layman terms is that the better you are with your VO2 max, the lower the likelihood you dying for any reason, right? So VO2 max is important for every single one of us. There's an argument that no data is better than bad data, right? And I think that's what you're getting at. But there's a counterpoint I'll tell you. And I went through the motions and I thought about this. So I used to live in Ohio. I was in Cleveland for many years working at Cleveland Clinic. When I was there, I remember one time we found out that they, like every other city, took away your trash and they took away your recycling. And then somehow it was revealed that all the recycling was actually, for some period of time, they lost the recycling contract or something, and all the recycling was actually just going in the trash. And I was like, oh, that's terrible. And then the mayor, because this was obviously an embarrassing moment, the mayor came on. He's like, well, look, we left it in place because we wanted to cultivate these habits. And I was like, okay, well, that's an interesting answer. And so it didn't make me feel great about the fact that I was wasting all my time doing recycling stuff. But I think about that example in the context of what you just said about the VO2, because we are cultivating people to be aware of it and to think about it. And I agree with you. The data in many cases is not there. And there is no gas exchange. You're getting VO2 on your watch. It's not going to be the same. And it's not going to, I don't think anything really correlates to the actual VO2 cardiopulmonary exercise test measures. With that being said, I don't know if the answer is right or wrong, but like we are cultivating a culture of awareness where it didn't exist prior to that. And so maybe that's a good thing. Maybe it's not. Maybe we shall be pissed that our recycling ends up in the trash. I don't know. But these are the thoughts that kind of go through my head about it.
Great example. I love where you took that, Rafid. And I think for my perspective wise, you've given me a gift right there of how to see things more wholly and less maybe to the core of what I'm searching for judgment. So that I thank you for that gift. And looking ahead, let's bring it to a close with our conversation here. You have a lot ahead of you. You've done a lot behind you. If I could ask you a two-parter here, the 18-year-old Rafid Fadul, if you could have changed career paths, what would you have gone into other than medicine?
Oh, man. I, in some ways, don't think I would have. My goal when I'm dead, my two goals when I'm dying and where I'm dead is I want my sons to be proud of the life that I led. And I want to make the world a little bit better than when I got here, right? Those are my two kind of my metrics, right? So I think medicine has given me that, and like focusing on healthcare and focusing on others has provided that. There's this biblical scripture that said, to whom much is given, much is expected. And we came here as immigrants. We didn't have much. And this is every day here is like bonus time as far as I'm concerned. And so there's this obligation to give back, and healthcare, whether it's at the bedside or working in the system itself, has given me that opportunity. So I'm actually very happy with the decision that I made. It's been bumpy at times. There's things I would we jokingly call residency the best thing you never want to do twice, because it's like 120 hours a week of pain. But yeah, I'm ultimately very happy with my decisions.
Well, I can hear the humility in your voice and your pause and your thought toward that question. Not a question any of us get very often. So I wanted to make sure I let a little bit. I was like, you may say more about that later today, and that's maybe a gift I can give to you from our conversation, Rafid. But
hey, I'm going to come back to you in like 10 minutes and be like, I changed my answer to be so late on a beach.
It's too late. The people already know. But I'm very humbled to have heard that from you and to have had this conversation. I think the only thing that it's tough to even want to go on the second part of the question here to close us out, but the greatest contribution that you think you'll make in your time ahead. I think you really answered that, but through your ARPA-H leadership and the role that you have been so graceful to accept here, what's the biggest contribution you think you'll make toward this?
Oh man, I hope I'm going to be a footnote. I'll tell you right now, I'm not the major part of the story. And I'll tell you why, because if you look at ARPA-H, the real stars of the show are our program managers. Like we get Like brilliance is table stakes just to get in the door. Like that doesn't get you in. You have to be brilliant and then have high EQ and have high kind of founder energy. And like all of our PMs are rock stars, and they're the ones really doing like heavy lift. And I couldn't be more proud of them. I think the legacy that I'll bring, if anything, is I want everyone to feel this sense of passion and obligation, right? I look at this as like a tour of duty of service that I'm humbled that I can do. And I hope that that's the kind of legacy that like we should be leading, right? Those guys are PMs. My job is to like make their lives easier and make sure they are set up for success so they can go out there and crush and really change the world, right? And having other people catch that fire and see that sense of purpose. That's what many of us are in this government role are here for. That's going to be that's the biggest thing that I can do is lead by example.
Wow. I think you just gave us the title of that show here is I'll Be a Footnote. And I think that describes you in a lot of different ways, from the successes you've had to putting people first. And Rafid Fadul, Chief Medical Officer of ARPA-H, a brilliant mind behind Zivian Health. So thankful to have had you on our show, and I wish you all the best coming forward. We'll be definitely watching all the great things that you'll be a part of in the coming years. So thank you for joining us.
All right, this was great, Brian. I appreciate you having me and my son. We both appreciated it. So enjoy the snowy weather.
Oh, we definitely will. And thank you to Outcomes Rocket Media, our production studio here. And you can definitely check out more insights on outcomesrocket.com.